The following program is made possible by the friends and partners of Creation Today. Welcome to the Creation Today show, where we bring together interviews with experts and solid Bible teaching. Your co-hosts, Eric Hovind and Paul Taylor, affirm the ultimate authority of God's Word, the truth of creation, and why it matters to you.
That's evidence of evolution, Paul. So the whole horse evolution that's still in the textbooks today, throw that out the window. Evolutionists have been presenting speciation as evidence for Darwinian evolution.
Now that's absurd.
There have been two research journal summits recently where creation scientists have gathered together and presented their research to the public that they've been working on and have had peer-reviewed in creationist peer-reviewed journals. And evolutionists say that creationists don't do research. Come on. Well, I had the privilege at the Answers in Genesis mega conference to sit down with Dr. Jean Leitner. She is a researcher in the field of baraminology, and I think you'll find the interview that she granted me is incredible as she explains not only the field of baraminology, but also how thankful she is for all the evolutionary research that's being done out there. Join us this week as we talk about baraminology and how creation scientists really do research.
Well, you're watching the Creation Today show, and Eric, it's been great to hear about your exploits at the Answers mega conference.
It was a great time up there, let me tell you, it really was. I got to interview so many scientists and have so much fun. I can't believe I'm turning into the creation geek that some of the people out there that I meet have already become. That's me now.
Amazing. And last week's show, we talked. We showed clips of two very high-powered scientists, Dr. Andrew Fabich from Liberty University and Dr. Georgia Perdome, who works with Answers in Genesis.
Yep.
And you had a lengthy interview with another lady, a highly intelligent lady.
Man. She's an independent researcher. Dr. Jean Leitner is her name, and she's been studying a field called baraminology, which is literally the study of the originally created kind. So what kind of animals were actually on the ark with Noah? And it was a fascinating interview.
So we're going to be seeing quite a bit of Dr. Leitner during today's program, but you also had the opportunity to show some of the scientists at Answers in Genesis and from elsewhere a clip of the Genesis movie.
Oh, I am so excited about this project that we're working on because it is literally the first time in history that somebody has tried to put together a depiction of what happened in Genesis using all the latest technology and doing it in 3D. So that's what we did. We let these, from young to old, from layman to scientist, we let them all watch this Genesis 3D portion, and they were pretty blown away. Actually, I had Dr. Jean Leitner check it out along with several others. I got a clip I can show you of her.
Let's see it right now.
Check this out.
Actually, that sounds kind of neat because we live in such a visual society. We want to see everything. And I know they've done that with other portions of the Bible, so it's really cool to have it with Genesis.
I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, I want to see whatever they just saw. Patience. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. We're going to actually release some of this stuff actually really soon. So coming up, we got a big date. Keep an eye on the GenesisMovie.com website. September 19th is a big date for that.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, now it's time.
Ben's here. We got a segment, Ask or Think, and he's going to probably make us think.
I hope so.
Ben, what do you got for us today?
Eric, today we are talking about absurdity. Now, isn't it absurd to call a concept absurd and then believe a similar version of that same concept? Now that's absurd. Today's Ask or Think goes all the way back to 1814 and the noted romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. Yes, I'm sorry, today we're talking about a poet. In his day, Shelley was probably more known for his writings on atheism than his poetry, and today he's probably best remembered for being the husband of Mary Shelley, the author of the book Frankenstein. In an article he wrote entitled A Refutation of Deism, Shelley attempted to disprove the design demands a designer argument. See, as creationists, we believe that the intricate designs of the universe could not have happened by chance. This intricate design demands a designer, right? See, Shelley takes this argument a step further. He says that if creation needed a designer, then that designer would need a designer, and then that designers would need a designer, and so on, so that there would be an infinite number of designers, each designing the one to follow. That's a lot of designs. He writes, the assumption that the universe is a design leads to a conclusion that there are infinity of creative and created gods, which is absurd. I guess my question is, why is it absurd to believe in gods continually creating one after the other, and it's perfectly logical to believe that nature has been infinitely creating itself? On one hand, what he believes to be absurd is exactly what evolutionists believe. Though they don't believe in gods creating themselves over and over again, evolutionists believe that nature has created itself again and again. And with all due respect, I agree with Percy Bysshe Shelley. That's absurd. A design demands that there is a designer. His name is God, and the Bible tells us about creation, God's plan for our lives, and redemption through His Son, Jesus Christ. That's today's Ask or Think.
Wow, thanks, Ben, very much. I appreciate that. Always coming up with good stuff. It's nice to have young men doing that these days. Hey, I've got some more interview footage with Dr. Gene Leitner that I'd really like to show you. We've got to take a break right now, but please stay tuned, because when we come back, I want to show you this footage where she really gets into some of the science. It's really good stuff. Stick around.
Welcome back. You're watching the Creation Today show with me, Paul Taylor, and with Eric Hovend. And Eric, you've not long been back from the Answers Mega Conference.
I tell you, Paul, I'm still on cloud 10, because I was there and there were talks given that were for the average person, for the layman out there, and then they actually held the Answers Research Journal Summit. It sounds good anyway, Summit. I don't know if it was Summit or not, but anyway.
Top of a hill.
Yes, they were there talking about the latest research and different things, and this one was focused on the Ark. And so Dr. Gene Leitner, who we just showed you a clip of, she actually did a great job of explaining what baraminology is and the research that they're doing on the Noah's Ark project, tracing animals back to the original kinds of animals. Because I don't know if you realize this or not, in the creation evolution world, there's a debate on kind versus species. Matter of fact, that's what Ray Comfort's new DVD, Evolution versus God. He did a great job of saying, I don't want just a different species, because they could be different species and still be the same kind. I want proof of Darwinian evolution. So evolutionists have been presenting speciation as evidence for Darwinian evolution, when really we're saying, well, hang on, we've never seen one kind change into a different kind. And they'll like to say, well, give me a definition of a kind, Eric. Okay, here's the definition of a kind that you can't go wrong with. The animals that were originally able to reproduce when God created them. Boom, I got my definition. Now, they don't have a good definition of species still, but hey,
that's right.
You guys keep working on that.
And we see variation within those kinds. And just for those who've sort of been in this subject for a little while, what we're talking about here is probably what many of you used to refer to as microevolution. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we don't use the term microevolution anymore, which may shock you, but we don't use that term because evolution really implies an upward step, creation of information, which is not happening within the baramin. Bara, the two Hebrew words, bara, created, min, kind. So we're getting variation of DNA, of genetic information within the created kind. That does happen. We observe that. And that's what Dr. Leitner has been researching with her team that includes our friend Bodie Hodge as well, who we've interviewed on the show before. And they're trying to find out all the various different kinds of kinds that could have been on the ark.
It is phenomenal research, and I think you'll enjoy this interview, or this clip of the interview. If you want full behind-the-scenes interview, you can go to our YouTube site, youtube.com/creation today. So check out this interview we did with Dr. Jean Leitner when I asked her about the original created kinds.
Since we were doing it in the context of Noah's Ark, we were pointing out that things were preserved on the ark according to their kinds. And we went through the book of Genesis and saw how the word was used, and we realized that kinds were groups of animals that could interbreed, reproduce, fill the earth. And so we used hybrid data. If animals can form hybrids between two species, then even though we call them species, and even though there may be a good reason for us to classify them as such, from a biblical standpoint, you didn't need all the species on the ark. You needed a kind on the ark, so they would reproduce and fill the earth. And as animals reproduce and fill the earth, they change as they adapt to different environments. So that's not a problem within a biblical worldview, the changing and adapting. But we don't see any evidence that those changes, when we look at them carefully, are the types of changes that the evolutionists need for one kind of creature to change into another kind of creature.
How is the research going in the field of baraminology? It's only been going on for about, well, you tell me, how long has baraminology been happening, and where are you guys at, and where are you hoping to head?
Well, the term is actually fairly old, and it was going on before I became involved in the about 2006, 2008, somewhere in there. So it's going on. There's some researchers. We're starting to see an increase in people who are addressing these kinds of issues. Answers in Genesis has this Ark Kinds project in preparation for the Ark encounter, which has really got us to the place of we're making much better estimates at what was probably on the Ark. But if you read any of the papers I wrote, we're left with lots of questions. And that's the way science works. There's lots of fun questions, especially when we weren't there to observe it, and we have to kind of surmise some of what was going on in the past. But everything I've found in the research fits great in the biblical model. And so the deeper I dig, the more I see stuff fits, and it fits very well. I was kind of astounded when I did the mammals. I'd always thought, oh, you have these nice, neat trees and everything looks related. Well, that's not really what's going on. If you study taxonomy, you find the neatly nested hierarchies thing. Well, things jump nests, and taxonomists change where they classify things. So a lot of the lay-level arguments aren't even true, and the scientists in the field know that they aren't true, but the layman misses it. So I found an awful lot that really is a problem for the evolutionists, and yet it fits very well in the creation model. So I was really excited.
An amazing lady, and what a privilege to be able to talk to her like that and to be able to get information about baraminology.
Now, there's still probably a lot of people out there that are confused about baraminology, because here we've all learned the Linnaeus system growing up. Really, the Linnaeus system isn't based on the created kind like baraminology is. It really is a whole brand new classification system. Explain that.
Well, it is. I mean, just to confuse things further, of course, Linnaeus actually thought he was looking at created kinds because he was working within that, but people have changed it since then.
Now, let me stop you right there. It's my understanding that in Darwin's day, they thought they thought that the animals that were there were the way God created them, just as they were, and that's what that was based on.
That's right, okay, yes. Whereas now we know that there's these broad kinds of animals that we think that God made, and we've seen the variation within those. And people sometimes say, well, what actually is that in the Linnaean taxonomy? Where is the created kind? Where is the baramin? And the answer is it differs, because there's a different method of classification. But broadly speaking, it is normally approximately the same level as the family level. So you talk about the dog family, all the creatures related to the wolf, that would be one baramin. The horse family, which is always an interesting one. Horses, zebras, or zebras as they say across the Atlantic.
Donkeys and mules. And
yes. A very, very interesting one. Of course, very interesting, because I was in a museum, well, we're both in the Smithsonian Museum not so long since. They had a fossil of the Eohippus, or as it was originally called, Hyracotherium. What's interesting is, for some reason, behind it, they'd put a tapir, part of the Hyrax family, and the fossils looked identical to me, because, of course, the Hyracotherium was actually originally thought to be a Hyrax, which is probably right.
So the whole horse evolution that's still in the textbooks today, throw that out the window.
Absolutely.
Wow, unbelievable. Okay, I got another interview, another clip of this interview that I want to show. Let me let you listen to this, and then we'll come back and comment on it here in just a second.
Yeah.
So how far away are we from discovering about how many kind of animals did Noah take on the ark?
Okay, we've got an estimate, and we need to recognize that it's an estimate. Okay, this isn't the Word of God, but it gives us an idea of what it may have been like, and that's important because we realize that everything in the history with Noah's Ark is realistic. It makes sense in the real world, whereas evolution is very much a very interesting myth. It's very creative, but we don't see that type of thing in the real world. We don't see the types of changes necessary for one kind of thing to change into a completely different kind of thing. Adapt? Yeah, we see some of that. Change into something really, really different? No. Nice story, but we don't see that.
So about how many?
About how many? For mammals, I was guesstimating 350 kinds. So we're talking thousands, not tens of thousands, but thousands. And I don't think we have an exact figure, but even our exact figure will be an estimate. And we just need to be cautious that it's God's word we trust completely. And some of our estimates give us a fairly good idea, but we don't base anybody's life on it.
Join Paul Taylor of Creation Today as he discusses topics like dinosaurs in the Bible, creation or evolution, who cares, how old is the earth, Noah and the flood, and James Ussher in biblical chronology. This set includes 5 CDs and a PDF study guide to go along with each lesson. To order this new series entitled Taylor Talks, visit us at www.creationstore.org. Can Christians believe the Bible from the very first word? This new study, The 6 Days of Genesis by creation speaker Paul Taylor, will help Christians understand exactly what happened during the creation week and why it is foundationally important to believe it. You will enjoy every minute of Paul's unique presentation style, combining scientific facts, solid biblical teaching, and a little British humor. For more information, visit us at www.creationtoday.org.
Welcome back. You're watching the Creation Today show with me, Paul Taylor, and with Eric Hovind. And we've been talking, or rather you've been talking to Dr. Jean Leitner. Remind us again who Jean Leitner is.
She's an independent researcher that does research in baraminology, the originally created kind. And right now she's doing really a huge project that has left her with more questions than anything else for the Ark Encounter that Answers in Genesis is going to be doing. How many original kinds of animals were on the Ark? And this is huge because it's really getting to the crux of the debate between kind and species. Evolution saying that speciation is evolution. We're saying no, speciation is not evolution. Going from one kind of animal to a new kind of animal, that would be considered evolution, which we have no evidence for at all.
That's right. And we're going to see another little bit of an interview now where Dr. Leitner went on to talk about her methodology in research and how she uses that and how it is that creation scientists do real, serious research. Let's look at this now.
You said the research that you've done brings up more questions, which is what we typically find in research. How far do you think baraminology can go until you feel like you've really got it down to a solid understanding?
Oh, we could use a few hundred more young Earth creation researchers. We can use a few decades. And that's the neat thing about science is there's just so much God placed in the world around us, so many interesting questions, and we do learn a lot. But you know what? I think there's always more questions partially to keep us humble. It's God who's omniscient, not us. And He'll let us learn lots of things, especially when we're seeking Him and asking Him to guide us in the process, which we did in this project for sure. But there's always going to be stuff out there, so we are left with a sense of awe at God. He is an awesome God. He gives us so many fun things to do as we research. So, it's like a kid being on a playground there.
So what would you say to the evolutionist that says, oh, you guys are just God of the gaps scientists? If you don't understand it, you just say God did it. What would you say to somebody that said that to you?
Well, that's kind of amusing because that was my impression of the evolutionist. Natural selection, like Tinkerbell, poof! And it's like, okay, like I studied genetics and I've dealt with dairy farmers trying to improve their herds, and things like that don't happen in the real world. But with natural selection, poof! And it's not that something like that can't happen. You can certainly have animals that survive better and reproduce in a particular place. And so I understand that aspect of it, but it really doesn't explain things. In fact, even the changes we see within kinds, the chance random mutations followed by natural selection, don't explain that either. We see design where God created His creatures so they were designed to be able to adapt to different environments so they could fill the earth and inhabit it. And the more I dig in my research, the more I find that. And it's like, oh, you evolutionists, you're really having a hard time here. So you find within the scientific literature people who still say, oh yes, random changes and natural selection. But you find a lot of evolutionists, often atheistic evolutionists, that say those mechanisms can't give us what we see. And they're right. And it's great because I get to find their research and I quote it. And yes, and they don't have an answer. Well, a creator sort of answers that question very logically because the kind of design we're seeing exceeds what human creators do. So we have a creator that exceeds the human creators out there. We have an awesome God.
All right, so if you could talk to just the evolutionist, we got a lot of atheists that watch our stuff. If you could talk to the atheistic evolutionist and just say something to them, where would you go? What would you talk about with them?
Well, it's interesting because they're caught in a particular paradigm. And I understand working within a paradigm, but when I went to graduate school, one of the things we were supposed to do is question the paradigm. I mean, that was what a good student did. That's what a good researcher does. And so they need to question the paradigm. And if they want to know what creationists think, they should ask a creationist. I am shocked at what some evolutionists think creationists think. It's like, well, hey, I'm a creationist. Come talk to me. I'll tell you what I think. And I have friends who are evolutionists, and they understand what I'm saying, and I've got a lot of respect for them. That doesn't mean they necessarily agree with everything, but they do realize that it's not some flaky thing out there. I'm approaching science like they approach science. They realize the limitations of science, and they respect the fact that I'm working in a different paradigm. So, take a time to at least look at the paradigm. You don't have to believe it, but understand it is worth looking at.
You know what she's saying right there, Paul, is so important. Why can't the evolutionists at least understand the Christian paradigm? Because what we get into, and we say this over and over, evidence isn't the issue. It doesn't matter. It's not like you've got special evidence that we don't have. We're all dealing with the same evidence. The difference is, as Dr. Leitner said, our paradigm, the way we look at the evidence. So that's what I think is so important, and she made that very clear.
It's right. I mean, we give a simple example. You look at things like the fact that you get similar structures in different animals. We've got 5 fingers on each hand. You look at frogs' hands and feet, 5 digits there. You've got the 5 bone structure in birds' wings, things like that. And of
that's
course,
evidence of evolution, Paul.
That's what they say in the textbooks.
I know.
Similar structures, clear evidence of evolution. But of course, that's actually a logical fallacy to say that. Now, this would be logically true. If evolution were true, I'm not conceding that, but if evolution were true, then you would expect to see similar structures.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you say similar structures, therefore evolution.
You can't go the other way.
No, because
you're exactly right.
If creation were true, Yes, it is, folks. I'm not doubting it. But if creation were true, then you would expect to see similar structures because they have a common designer.
And that's the beauty of the evidence that we see. And like it was last show that we interviewed Dr. Georgia Perdome, she agreed. She said, the evidence fits the landscape no matter what evolution does with the landscape. So no matter what comes up, they're going to make it fit. And that's exactly what we see happening.
Absolutely. You know, in last week's show, one of the things that I picked out that Dr. Andrew Fabich said, he talked about the fact that he'd had research published on his E. coli stuff. I know that Dr. Georgia Perdome has had research published in secular journals. Dr. Leitner has also had research published in secular journals. There is this myth that creation scientists do not publish.
And that's simply not true. Now, I did ask Dr. Leitner, and we'll have to get to this in another show. I asked her a little bit more about peer-reviewed, but I want to let you cover this real quick, because the way I view it is they say, well, creationists aren't, in peer-reviewed journals. Well, first of all, they are. But second, if what they presented was overtly creationist-oriented, it wouldn't be allowed in there.
Yes.
Address that real quick.
I mean, there are non-controversial things that some scientists might say who are creationists may not be writing on the subject of creation. It's there are many examples of people being published on that. Peer review means when the research is published in a scientific journal, it's been checked by people, other scientists in a similar field. Now, clearly, if you're going to have peer review, it does to some extent have a flaw in it, because it means that it's going to be like-minded people checking up on each other, which means that creationists are not going to get a look in if they publish a paper that is creationist in content.
Exactly.
Because it's going to be checked up by evolutionary scientists who are going to say, we don't accept that paradigm.
Now, I do love the fact that both Dr. Fabich and Dr. Perdome and Dr. Leitner have said, we love our evolutionary colleagues. Matter of fact, part of the interview that I didn't get to show you, if you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/creation today, you can watch the entire clip of Dr. Gene Leitner there. One of the things I love is all of them say, we love it when a good evolutionist will review our stuff based on the science. They can sometimes point out flaws or inconsistencies, and that's a good thing to find.
We should also point out there is peer review within creationism too. There's the Journal of Creation published by Creation Ministries International. There's the Creation Research Society Quarterly published by the Creation Research Society. There's the Answers Research Journal, which is published free online by Answers in Genesis. Their stuff has been very, very rigorously tested indeed.
Well, I've been loving what's going on in the creation world as I turn more and more into a creation geek, and I certainly enjoyed the Answers in Genesis Mega Conference, and then the journal, the journal summit, the Answers Research Journal Summit after that. It was absolutely wonderful.
If you've got questions that you want to ask us here at Creation Today, then send them in, please, to questions@creationtoday.org.
And we look forward to keeping you up to date on our travels around the world and what other creation ministries are doing around the world.
And if you want Eric or I to come to your church, get in touch with us through the website.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. God bless you today.
Do you need the tools to defend your faith? Visit our websites for up-to-date content. Attend one of our live events. And shop online at creationstore.org. We are Creation Today.